But yeah, well, listen, we're really looking forward to Bill. It's been probably about 10 years now. Close to every April, Bill would come out and would take
Yeah.
him at the dinner, and we would enjoy it. He's been a member for a long time, and we met. He met club members, being a judge at Lancaster for a long time, and he likes to say that he's been an exhibitor for 50 years. But I think that was 10 years ago when you said that. So might be even a little bit longer
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we're looking forward to having Bill tonight. It's an interesting topic. I got a few of these items in I guess an auction lot, like Civil War era photographs with the revenue stamps on the back, and we're going to get a chance to listen to more about it. But Bill now has an exhibiting column with Mark Schwartz every issue for the American Stamp Collector and Dealer, and we look forward to that. He started the Philatelic Gathering in Philadelphia, which was going strong for a long time but we're all around, and it's not going to die. It's going to keep going. And I think too that as you learn from Bill, he's a consultant for exhibiting and has had some really nice ones. That one a few years ago on the Civil War POW mail was just phenomenal. So we always look forward to him. So Bill, without any further ado, I will turn it to you. I will if we can turn off our mics. Bill, do you want questions along the way, or do you want them afterwards?
Questions along the way is fine. Questions afterwards is fine.
Okay, real good. Well, I will now.
You're going to work the slides for me.
Yep, I'm going to do that now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
Thank you for the introduction, Paul. It's good to see everybody. I'm happy to speak again. I like to think of myself as the April speaker for the Lancaster Club. And Paul just pencils me in every year and then tells me what to speak about. So yeah. I wait for months to find out what my assignment is, and then he tells me. What we're going to talk about tonight is a revenue exhibit. I want to give you a little background on revenues and why this exhibit happened. A long time ago, when I started exhibiting, and it has been 60 years now, I've been exhibiting. Do the math. I started when I was 16, so you guys can all figure out how old I am. I always wanted to have an exhibit, win a medal, I don't care which medal necessarily, in every class of all the types of exhibiting. At one time, there was 12 or 13 classes of exhibiting. One of those was revenues. And I said, well, I am not a revenue expert. I'm going to list for you the people in this country that I'm familiar with that are revenue experts, and they're happy to answer any of your questions that I can't answer tonight. That's Ron Lusher, Bob Hohertz, Eric Jackson, Richard Freeberg, Mike Millar. These are outstanding, sophisticated revenue collectors, a couple dealers thrown in there, and they really know 100 times, 200 times more than I do about revenues. But I decided to pick on an interesting subject for me with revenues, and that was CDVs. That's an abbreviation, an acronym for Carte-de-Vistas. And Carte-de-Vistas were photographs, and they were greeting cards. They were started in the 1850s in Europe, and they did not catch on very well at first. But then they finally came out with a Carte-de-Vistas photograph, calling card, greeting card, if you will, of Napoleon III. And for some reason, that ignited everybody's interest in using CDVs. And that phenomena actually was called card mania back then, a fairly modern term, swept to the United States. And in the United States, it became very popular as part of the Civil War effort, particularly by the Union, though the South also. But the Union soldiers liked to receive the Carte-de-Vistas from home, and the people back home liked to receive the Carte-de-Vistas photographs of the soldiers as mementos and heartfelt feelings about their soldiers at war. The United States government decided that one of the ways they could raise money during the Civil War to fund the Union effort was to form some sort of taxation on the carte-de-vistas, or photography, if you will. And they decided that first off, they would do a 2-cent blue playing cards tax on the carte-de-vistas, and the carte-de-vistas usually had the photograph 2¼ by 3½ inches on the front. On the back was the name of the photographer, and on the back was usually the tax paid. The photographers had to pay the tax. Now, hopefully, they passed it through to the customers. How popular was this? Well, in 1862, in the little town of West Chester, I've determined there was at least 7 professional photographers producing CDVs as fast as they could. People were buying them by the hundreds. It became a way of life in our society, in the culture, in the North, particularly during the Civil War. The tax only existed for 2 years, August of 1864 to July of 1866. It wasn't an excessive tax. You could call it a use tax, if you will, but it was an excise tax by any legal definition. And what they did is it was based on the quantity of the cards that were sold. If you bought 100 cards, for example, it might have been taxed at a different rate than if you bought 500 cards. But people were also, as we'll see as we go through this brief single frame exhibit, you'll see that they also not only had photographs made of themselves in a portrait style, they also had portraits done of their animals, dogs, cats, goats, cows, and some buildings. A lot of children were photographed. There were also some family photographs. It was really the heyday and the start of photography, and it really caught on in this country. Amazing. In a way, it reminds me of the growth and boom of the picture postcard, which took place about 35 years later at the turn of the century, 1900. But this was a major event in the social world. When you went to somebody's house, you handed them on arrival your CDV, and hopefully they handed you one back. It wasn't a business card. It was more of, hi, it's a greeting. It's an hello. It's I'm happy to see you kind of card. Paul, next screen. Thank you. There we go. One of the things I did in this exhibit is I tried to show as many different types of photographers. I also tried to show as many different types of revenues as I could in a single frame exhibit. I think you could go on and on and on and probably make a 10-frame exhibit of this stuff. But to be honest with you, it would look an awful lot like the first frame. So one frame sort of captures, in my mind, the essence of the story. This is a card that was produced and printed by Butler and Carpenter, a famous photography house in Philadelphia. And you can see the stately gentleman in the photograph on the front. The law was effective July of 1866, the tax law, and it ran through after the Civil War to help pay for the Northern cause, to August of 1866. The retail price of most CDVs normally was less than 26 cents, and therefore the tax was roughly 2 cents. From 26 cents to 50 cents, if that's how many you bought, you paid a 3 cents tax. If the cards cost 51 cents to $1, then it was a 5-cent tax. That's important to note for the revenues that are attached. I have only found, these are all from West Chester. I use the town of West Chester, where I live, as the foundation of this exhibit. All these CDVs are from West Chester. and not necessarily from a photographer in Westchester, but they're Westchester generated people and Westchester usage, if you will. The interesting part to me is their revenue taxes. That's what they are. They were pure and simple. They were revenue taxes. The 1 cent was used rarely. The 2 cent was used a lot. The 3 cent was used somewhat. The 4 cent, I have never found one from Westchester. I have a few 5 centers, but I have no 10 centers, which would have been highly unusual to find a 10-cent revenue. But they were available for the buying public, and the photographers, keep in mind, were paying the taxes. Paul, next slide, please. Okay, this is one showing at the bottom, they use special envelopes to mail the CDVs back and forth. This is one that went from Westchester to Kennett Square in southern Chester County. And they were small, fancy little envelopes. This is a 2-cent Scott number 112, I believe, postage stamp with a little fancy cancel. The envelopes are far more expensive to buy usually than the CDVs themselves. So probably the nicest item you're going to see in this exhibit tonight is this pretty ragged looking envelope at the bottom of this page. The revenues varied, by the way. The photographers weren't too careful. They were supposed to use the revenue documentaries called playing card revenues, but they violated that quite often, and they seemed to use whatever was available in their drawer or their desk. But they were very conscientious about the collection of the tax. I have found very few CDVs that were sold that didn't have the revenue collected through the tax revenue stamp. It was truly a tax revenue collecting process. Also, photography was new and it was exciting, and the CDV boomed, and it boomed. The government saw the opportunity as a tax source during this time period. Paul, next slide, please. It's a nice one with no marking of where it was really printed. Most likely Butler and Carpenter again. They printed a lot. The tax stamps were to be canceled by the photographer in a manuscript with the initials and the date. That wasn't always complied with. You'll find some without the initials or without the date, but a lot of them have the scribble on there, and they're sometimes difficult to discern. But if you try hard enough, you can kind of figure out who the photographer was in Westchester, and from the initials and from the date. It's really an interesting little jigsaw puzzle trying to figure out each one. Here's a one at the bottom showing, this is the reverse of the actual card pictured at the upper left, of a child. And children's photography was very prevalent during this time period. And they really dressed the kids up. The kids are really cute. Great outfits. Paul? This is another example of the playing cards revenue stamp. Photographer pretty famous here in the Westchester area was E. Woodward and Company, right in the middle of Westchester, Church and High, I think. And it's always fun to find the local card, and it really helps tell the story, and it really ties in local social history to our hobby of collecting philatelically. And revenue stamps are certainly part of the hobby, no doubt about it. Next slide, please. This is the 2-cent stamp again with the playing cards. This is, again, a Woodward photographer from Westchester. Again, a child dressed up in a fancy little outfit of the time period. And these were passed out to relatives and friends and neighbors, etc. It was a way to, you have to remember, there were no emails, there was no scans, there was no copy machines. This was a way to communicate and to show people various aspects of your life in an effective way. You could think of it in a way as miniature scans and miniature emails, if you want to put it in today's terminology. Paul, next slide. This is one. Some of them get clipped. They rounded the corners for various reasons. I don't quite understand why. Maybe they slipped in your pocket better. So you find some with the corners sort of cut off, most likely with scissors. This is the photographer A.A. Anderson of West Chester. And here, though, it's an orange 2 cent, not the blue. And the color of the stamps are all part of the various printings of the revenue stamps of that time period. In this one frame exhibit, I tried to show as many different examples of the revenues that were appropriate, apropos to the period, and from West Chester. So I was trying to tie like a matrix together of revenue stamps, CDVs, West Chester, and photography, and the social aspects of the CDV. Paul, next one, please. This is another orange, 2 cent orange revenue stamp, initials prominently shown. Again, a Woodward one. This is a very nice example of a gentleman, typical of the dress of that time period, reflecting the Civil War era. Very nice CDV. Paul, next one, please. This is back to the 2 cent blue. This is from another photographer, John Odiente. I'm probably Odiani. I think I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sure. It's a nice silhouetted kind of photograph. They got a little tricky with some of the photographs. I happen to like the ones that are kind of framed or silhouetted. The photographer's got a little artsy at times, as one can imagine photographers might do. This again is a very nice West Chester CDV. Paul? There's two examples of the 2 cent blue proprietary revenue stamp. both stamps perf 12, of course. And one is a attractive woman on the right and another attractive woman on the left. And what I imagine would have been their Sunday finery, or as they used to say, Sunday go to church clothes. But their clothing was, you obviously got dressed up for your photography session with the local photographers. Paul, next one, please. This is a blue proprietary as well, a West Chester photographer. Oh, I think we went the wrong way. There we go. Thank you. This is a photographer, A.A. Anderson at the top and E. Woodward at the bottom. I think E. Woodward was probably the most prolific West Chester photographer, but he had a good run with his money. He had a lot of competition, and it's fun to see how they tried to outdo each other. Bottom one is a child, and the top one's a fairly stern-looking woman and reflective of the wartime psyche, I'd imagine, 1864. So, Paul, next one, please. Two views of women on the backs or fronts, if you will, of these CDVs. These are the 2 cent proprietaries, first issue of the Internal Revenue stamps. Very nice color variances on these. The blues are a little different. Many of the first revenue issues have color varieties, if you will. One would expect that from the printing of that time period on the revenues. Next. I like this one. This is a Woodward one from West Chester. Sort of a silhouetted kind of effect of this young woman in the photograph. This is another 2 cent blue proprietary. Initial and the cards numbered for filing purposes. Dated July 65. So we're starting to get towards the end of the Civil War at this point. Paul? It's another 2 cent. Kind of interesting one though, because it really reflects a couple. It's the first one I think we've seen where there's two people in the photograph. They don't look real happy to me being photographed. It doesn't look like they were really enjoying it, but they obviously sat through the process of being photographed. And he looks a little disconcerted, to say the least. Paul, next one. It's another 2-cent blue proprietary. Very nice item, dated March of '65, printed in Philadelphia. Photographer, again, was E. Woodward out here in West Chester. Paul? This is one that has a different kind of back. There was no tax stamp on this one, and I wanted to include one of those. The top one is a 3-cent stamp, reflecting the revenue increase because of the amount of the charge for the quantity of the printing. They paid a 3-cent tax on these CDVs. The bottom one with his no tax stamp. Almost all the Westchesters have revenue stamps. Most sold after August of 1866 tended not to have them because the tax was eliminated. So most likely this was printed in August or later of 1866. I can't swear to that because it's not dated, but to be honest with you, it's a good guess. Because the photographers really took it very seriously, the collection of the and billing of the tax, if you will, on their CDVs sales. Paul? I've included a few extra ones that weren't in the exhibit, but I thought it might be interesting to just see them, how prevalent they really can be. They're not that expensive. If you want to start a collection of Lancaster CDVs, I'm sure there's hundreds of them out there available to you. Every once in a while, there's one that's really special and it costs you a few bucks, a little more than you might like. But most of them are in the inexpensive range of, I'll say, $5 to $25, sometimes even less than that. The CDVs were very plentiful, so there's a big supply. What the premium you're paying for usually is what's on the picture, and also what's the revenue stamp on the back. The photographers don't seem to impact too much the valuation retail-wise for your purchases, but the stamp and the condition of the stamp and the stamp value and what's in the photograph plays a major factor in the pricing of the CDV. Paul? This was the last one. I really like the one on the left. It's got the fancy back of Taylor, photographer of West Chester. He was really quite famous in West Chester. And very nice stamp, well centered, nice fancy back, nice sort of engraving looking logo on the back. And the one on the right is another West Chester Woodward example. You could buy hundreds of West Chester CDVs if you put your mind to it. Paul, that's it. That's the last page. I'm happy to answer questions if I can.
I can leave this up for if there's questions.
Okay.
Question I do have is, I mentioned I have 2 of these with manuscript cancel stamps on the back. And
Okay.
like yours, none of them were tied at all to the photograph. I assume they were kind of pre-hand canceled before sticking them onto the back of the photograph.
Yeah, I don't know if they were signed before or after, but it was pre-done, yes.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if they actually sat there and signed a stack of them after they were affixed, or they signed them before they were affixed.
Okay. And you were mentioning
they're generally not tied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were mentioning too the mailing envelope. How would
Yes.
that compare in price to say the 5 to 25 for this CVD?
You might pay 40 or 50 for the mailing envelope.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is not, the revenue CDVs can be an inexpensive subset of your hobby if you'd like. And they're kind of fun. I mean, I did it as a fun thing and I'm glad I did. And it was my way of doing a revenue exhibit in a manner that I could handle. This isn't too complicated. It's kind of cute, kind of fun. And to be honest with you, it sort of fit my revenue skills, which aren't too high. So it was kind of nice to do a revenue exhibit, and I can say to people, yeah, I did a revenue exhibit. I don't tell them it was CDVs, but you know, it was fun. Next question.
Bill, I was looking at the addresses on the back of those cards, and there were several different photographers. They all seemed to be on Gay Street. Was
That's
there a
right.
reason for the congregation all in one area?
Yeah, that was the business section of the town at that time. Gay Street was the main street. That would be like Main Street, if you will, of the town. There's two main streets still in Westchester. One is Gay, and the other one is Market, and they run parallel to each other. And Gay in the 1860s was probably, and I'm pretty sure about this, was the main street of what the town of Westchester and the county seat. The courthouse of Chester County, which is Westchester, is the county seat, one of 67 county seats in Pennsylvania. And I'm one of the few people, and I like to tell people this, I have visited all 67 courthouses in the state of Pennsylvania. I don't think you're going to find another wacko that's done that.
Have you been to Warren?
Been to all of them.
Oh,
All 67, Len.
I did a dedication there for, I think, the centennial of it or something back several years ago.
We have.
Do you know if any of those buildings are still around that these cards were from, or has that all been torn down? And
No,
rebuilt?
oh no, in Westchester, they're all still standing.
They're still there.
Oh yeah.
Very
It's
nice.
it's an historical town, and we believe in preservation.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's very
Thank you.
nice. Yeah. Good question on Gay Street.
Bill, I have a question. Have you ever come across any that used multiple stamps?
Yes, Dave, that's a great question, and I wouldn't expect any less from you, David Hunt, than a great question. And that's a good question. There are some with multiple stamps, no doubt about it. And you'll pay a premium for those multiple stamp CDVs for sure. I have not found any yet from Westchester, like say 2 1-cent stamps to make up the 2-cent rate, or a 3 and a 2 to make up the 5-cent rate. I keep looking for those. I do. That's sort of one of those eternal searches, which makes the hobby fascinating for us. The search continues, Dave. But that's a great question. Yeah, they're out there, but I haven't found any yet with multiple stamps from Westchester. Do I think there's some out there? Yeah, I do. I haven't found them. If you find one, Dave, you can hold it for me.
Bill,
Yes. George?
I've not been into revenues at all until the last few months,
Good.
but it's interesting to see them in actual use rather than just a collection of stamps and
Yes.
a glass envelope.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I kind of like it for that reason too, George. These were actually used and they served a social purpose. I think sometimes tying philately to a social purpose is an important thing we can do as collectors. I like doing that.
I have a question.
Sure.
I
Bob?
see a lot of CDVs with no stamps on the back and
Yes.
only a very few with the stamps. So was the tax for the stack of CDs that they got, or was it for each single CDV they got?
No, it was used for on each CDV, but if they had a stack, they could put, say, 25 or 26 in a bundle. They could pay one tax on one CDV. You're right.
So
the answer
basically,
is for,
each CDV should have a stamp on it.
pardon me?
Each CDV should have a stamp on it.
In most cases, the answer is yes, during that 2-year time period,
Okay.
because the photographer wanted to prove he had collected the tax. But after 1866, CDVs didn't go away, but the tax did.
So those are the ones that are floating around without stamps on them.
Most likely, though, Bob, I want to caution you. I think a CDV could have been printed, photographed and printed and somebody forgot to put the stamp on, or intentionally forgot to put the stamp on from 1865.
Yeah.
But not everybody was. I mean, how many IRS agents were out there checking on them? So
Yeah.
Or they soaked it off too.
Yeah, but you can see that, Bob.
Yes, yes,
You
you
can
can.
see that.
Yes, you can.
I was
Yeah.
going to throw this out there. Maybe somebody else can remember, but one of those proprietary stamps, the blue ones, I think, has a doubling on the word. It's in Scott.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's varieties. All kinds of printing. Yeah, there's all kinds of printing varieties. Sure. Love to have one of those on a CDV.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a whole matrix here, Bob. You could take with this type of a collection and just keep expanding it, in different directions for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill?
I tried to keep it simple for this single frame exhibit.
Bill, it's Mark. Question for you. I don't know if you mentioned this earlier. How long before they started taxing it were had CDVs begun to be used?
Well, a good question. They really took off. Well, they were created around 1851 was really the first one in France, obviously. That's where the name comes from. But in 1859, the Napoleon picture on a CDV created the boom in Europe. That boom swept across the Atlantic and hit the United States like the Beatles. That's my analogy. And we had sort of like a British invasion or the French invasion of CDVs. They were used all from, I'm going to say 1860 is a guess. Now, I don't know that for sure, Mark, but I'm going to guess the boom happened here in 1860 and continued on to about 1875 or so. But somewhere around 1871, 72, the style of photography changed, the methodology changed. So you had cabinet cards and other types of photography that became far more prevalent and more desirable to the buying public than CDVs. CDVs was an early form of photography and use of photography. I hope I answered your question.
You did, thanks.
Yeah.
Paul, can you go back to the first slide, please?
Mm-hmm. Is this Mike?
Yes.
I recognize that tone.
Yeah, it's that strange US accent I've got. So you've got in the first line Carte-de-Vistas, Viste, V-I-S-T-E-S.
Yes.
I have a feeling it might have been an abbreviation of Carte-de-Visite, V-I-S-I-T-E-S, which actually would mean visiting card.
Yeah, I've seen it both ways. The acceptable way here, it was referred to as Carte-de-Vistas, as in singular sounding. I've seen it the other way though too. You're right.
Yeah,
I think it's a translation issue, Mike.
Yeah. Well, no, but I mean it means visiting card. So
yeah. Oh yeah. But we're Americans. We change stuff.
I know you drop U's in words,
Yeah, that's honor. Honor doesn't have a U.
Honor, color.
Yeah.
Arbor.
That's a good question.
But it's a nice collection. Never seen these before.
Well, they're fun. They're really fun.
Yeah.
And they're nice for us as collectors because most of us can afford these. These aren't an exorbitant price. You can have a great time for a couple $100.
I have a question.
Sure, go on.
I'm fascinated by the technology here. I have an exhibit on Abraham Lincoln, and I know that in the same period, there were not very many photos of Lincoln because photography was in its infancy.
That's right.
And I'm wondering if the developing process was the same or similar to what we see in the early real photo postcards, or if it
Oh,
was
no.
something different.
I think it's very early and nowhere near as sophisticated. But I'll tell you what the photographers did, though, with the Carte-de-Vistas, which fascinated me. They figured out how to do like 9 images on one plate of the more quickly. And I was fascinated with the fact that they got into like almost mass production of these. So it wasn't one plate per photograph. They somehow duplicated that image like 9 times on a plate. And they could print a whole bunch in one day. I mean, they could just print them like crazy with
Bill,
that kind of method. I think that I'm going to come back to, hold on a second, Dave. I want to make a question to Dawn because I know she's a Lincoln expert. I just saw a real photograph of Lincoln sell on eBay yesterday. A Brady photograph sold for $65. Why is that so low?
I would be very suspect.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
I'm wondering, were these cards, the photography, were they stable? Because the early real photo postcards, of course, which were much later than this, were not stable and tended to deteriorate. These look really good to me from here.
They do. I've seen some that look a little faded, but if that, maybe they had them outside on the back porch and they got, sun bleached. I'm not sure if it was the photography. So the photography is pretty good. You're right.
Yeah. I'm interested. Would this have been a hobby of a fairly affluent person? I wouldn't think most because
No. What I found in my research, it's very clear that all classes of society collected and saved your CDVs, and they had little albums that they had on their coffee table. That's my choice of words, coffee table, of their CDVs. They showed off their CDVs to the other visitors. Hey, would you like to see my CDVs? And so it was all levels, and they were so cheap to have made by everybody. So all classes of people, all stratas of society were having, slaves had CDVs made. I mean,
that's amazing because
it really was not. You would think photography would have been a rich person's hobby in 1863, and it's not. These CDVs were produced for everybody, and everybody had them, and it was almost like a necessity of life. When you walked around, you better have a pocket full of your CDVs, because when you went somewhere, I think somebody would say, "Can I have your CDV?" It's not like business cards, though, but it's not dissimilar either. So, but they're early photography.
It must have been tremendously important in the society, because if you recall, picture postcards did not really take off until they you could start sending them for a penny. People would spend a penny on the postcard and a penny on the stamp, and it didn't really take off till it got that cheap. So we're talking about something way earlier that was more expensive.
Yeah, way earlier, but still a very inexpensive. You could buy stacks of them for not very much money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
People collected them. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I've seen the albums in historical societies. Mm-hmm. The Historical Society here in Chester County, I asked them once how many CDVs of Chester County did they have on file. I'm going to beg off and tell you, I forget the number, but it was thousands on file at the Historical Society here in Chester County. Different ones, thousands of different ones. So it was a big deal. Not unlike, though, your analogy, Dawn, of the picture. This was a similar fad, but 35 years early. Any other questions?
Well, I just want to make a comment that in order to get the multiple images, actually the camera had multiple lenses.
Okay. I'm not a
So you-
photographer, but so I maybe shouldn't have been as impressed by that as I was. But
So
I
the
can
camera
tell
would-
you,
Yeah, so the camera would have like 8 lenses,
okay,
or
I was not
whatever.
aware of that. Yeah, thanks, Dave.
and it would put 8 images onto the plate, the negative.
Okay. I was not aware of that.
Now, to
Thank you.
answer her other question, I think the process had not changed very much from this type of photograph up to the postcards.
Right.
What you can find is ones that have faded are ones that were probably not processed properly, were not
Mhm.
thoroughly washed, or did not have the developer all washed out.
Yeah.
I
Thanks, Dave.
actually, the making picture postcards out of real photographs lasted quite late, because I know my father actually made some in the 1930s. So
Yeah. But they were big from about 1902 to about 1906 was their heyday of real picture postcards. That 4 or 5 year time period, which Dawn was relating to. Any other questions? Hey, listen, I'm on a roll making up all these answers tonight. So if you got a question, I'll make up an answer. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for their attention, and I hope you had a good time and you learned a few things about CDVs. And now when you see these in the dealer stock or on eBay, think about it. I'm waiting to see the next great Lancaster collection of CDVs by Paul Peterson or Charles DeComo or David Hunt or Hal Klein from Lebanon. Mike Bach ought to have these. So I'm out there trying to merchandise the concept of collecting CDVs.
Bill, I
Thanks very
appreciate
much.
the information. I've had several of them at my store, and I've never given them much more than a second look. Most of mine that I've had at the store are Lancaster or York.
Yeah,
But they
good.
do sell.
Do they sell, Len?
Yeah, they sold.
Yeah.
And I get them every so often. Once in a while, I'll get a batch of them in.
Yeah.
I don't recollect too many that weren't from Lancaster or York. And I don't know what the values are, but we usually get $5 a piece for them. And if they have a uniform on,
Yep.
closer to 15.
Yep. Yeah. So Civil War soldier photographs on a CDV do draw a premium for sure.
Yeah, I have a lot of the stamps now at the store, but not the cards yet. So
Yeah.
we will get some in though. They do float in and out.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, it's Mike Marino. Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
Mike. Good to see you.
I'd like to share my screen. I have a couple photos here. If I can do
Okay.
it.
Okay. Ask Paul to take mine
Yeah.
down.
Take this one down.
Here we go. These are tin types.
Yeah.
Apologize, but 2 of them are upside down, but they have the revenue stamps on the back.
Yeah.
And then this is the Queen of England, Queen Victoria, in a large and a small one.
Yeah.
And I acquired about a couple dozen of these a couple years ago and paid pennies on the dollar. But here's my favorite on the bottom. Can you guys see this?
Yeah. Looks
Yes.
like Annie Oakley.
Yeah. So it's York, Pennsylvania is where
Yeah.
we're taken.
Nice.
All right. I'm done.
I think I dated her once.
Tell Pat.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Good job.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
You're
How do I
welcome.
get rid of this?
I have some to share also. If he gets his off.
Okay. And Mike, you want to let yours out?
I would like to.
It's a learning curve.
There it is. Okay, I
There
got
you
it.
go. There you
Okay,
go,
RD, you're on.
Okay. Number one. Do I have one of those on? Is a tin type also.
I don't see it yet, Bob.
Nothing at all?
You
Nope.
see, it's the Civil War something.
Here,
Okay. That's the catalog of Civil War photographers' revenue stamp cancellations. That is a CD that was put out by the, I guess, the Revenue Association. I don't know. In case anybody wants a catalog or a reference for them. I don't know how comprehensive this is, but
That's good.
it
Uh,
does exist.
Thanks, Bob. I used this catalog to help me produce that single frame exhibit. This was invaluable to the production of the single frame exhibit you just saw. It's really comprehensive and guys, it's a wonderful catalog.
All right, here are a couple of Lancasters.
There you go. Now we're talking.
North Queen, Thomas Cummings, the two of them there. And this one down below, which I was really excited about, is a nice hand stamp of Gill.
Yeah, beautiful. That's nice.
Pretty unusual.
Yeah.
I have the fronts here too, but and
Yeah.
then I have one of these. I have to do this way. I have to learn how to do this more smoothly. I have this, the 3-cent proprietary,
Mhm.
and that is on that, which unfortunately someone put a big question mark on,
Yeah.
trying to identify who it is. I have a couple soldiers. Interesting. I have one soldier is actually identified, which is interesting. And it says it was copied November 1863. He died before that. So you can wind up with some interesting results. And there are famous people in some of these things too.
Yes.
You never totally know what you're dealing with until you actually start to research the people. Some of them have names on, most do not, but every so often somebody in the family would have written the name down on it. And I have one here from Ezra Greenleaf Weld, who was an abolitionist, and he was a photographer in Cazenovia, New York. So you keep everything together. Keep everything together.
This is George here. Do you know why they all had such stern looks on their faces in those early photographs?
Had to keep them for a long time.
Why is that, George?
Well, they had a pose. It took more than a second for an image, and it's easier to frown than it is to smile.
That
Try
may
it.
not be true, George.
See how long you can smile.
And they had devices to actually hold the head still,
Hold the head.
like this. You sat in that and not moved.
If you're interested in the Lancaster County photographers, the Historical Society has a list on their website, and it gives you most of the addresses and the dates and things of that nature. And the one thing they were talking about, you were talking about Gay Street in West Chester. King Street, East and West King Street was prominent because what they would do is they would have natural light come in through they would cut a hole in the roof and have natural light come in so they could get better lighting for the photographs. And the same thing with Columbia. So what would happen is one would go out of business and another photographer who maybe came from out of town or out in the suburb, he would come into town and rent, lease, or buy that building.
Well, the other wheelchair that I had here, the seat was higher up.
I have some to share. You were talking about the round edges and things of that nature. This is one of the cards that I have, but there's let's see, maybe I don't have it open. I gotta open it. Hold on. Oh, where is it? I thought I had it open. But what they did is they would make a template and to cut to put in the albums. So that's why they have the round corners, so they would fit into the all right, let me get in here. Let's see here. Share. I thought I had it. No.
Oh,
See, I don't know if you can see this, but it's a template. And this is from a photographer in Burnville. But he basically gives you a template because they would sell photo out or, CDV albums or Carte-de-Vistas albums and things of that nature. So they would include this.
Nice. I
All
like
right, how do I
that.
get-
I like that piece.
all right, how do I get out of there?
That's pretty rare.
At the top.
At
it
the
says
top.
Stop viewing, the red.
All right, got it. I see it.
It's amazing the things you find out there.
Yeah.
We're wondering about the round corners and you found a
There you go.
template that they made and the reason why. That's great.
It is. Wonderful.
Any other related to this topic